I mean, there have been people that have come and gone, if you think about the last 10 years in our caucus and our cabinet. And
you said you think it's one of the reasons Carol Taylor left? Do you think it's one of the reasons Olga Illich left?
I do. I think, these people are friends of mine, and I don't like to talk publicly about them without their permission, and I don't have their permission to talk about them. So all I'm going to say is that if you put two and two together and you ask yourself, why would people like that, good people? I mean, Carol Taylor, when she came into our government, it was like a breath of fresh air. She brought something into our government, and for the time that she was here, it changed. Even the Premier changed. She has a very powerful personality that isn't aggressive. She has an amazingly positive influence over people, and she changed the face of our government in terms of how we relate to the public. I told her this many times. We could never be seen to be empathetic. In 2005, we lost, how many NDPs got elected in 2005? They had two. They ended up with 33, I think, after 2005. When Carol came in, Carol, I think, changed our relationship with the general public. Losing her was a tragedy for the BC Liberal Party. It's done. She's done. She's not going to come back. But
is there any hope for the party? The party can still pull it out and win the next election?
It is a faint hope at this point. I mean, I would not have been out saying what I was saying and telling the truth the way I have been the last 3 weeks if I thought that we have lots of time and that it's going to be easy to turn this around. This is going to be really difficult to turn around, and I hope we can do it.
You want to seek the leadership yourself?
No, I don't.
You got a candidate in the race?
No, I don't. I think there's some good people. I think there's some really good people in the caucus and in the cabinet, and I think George Abbott, Kevin Falcon are good people. They're leaders. They're intelligent. They can do it, and I know they're both probably going to try, and so I hope one of them. If
you said in your media scrum this afternoon, and I am going to go on to some topics in the energy field when I'm in the next segment. But you did say in your scrum this afternoon, you said you'd cancel the HST, you'd also cancel the tax cuts that were announced. And I'm sure that your announcement of that around 3 o'clock had something to do with the fact that an hour later the government actually did put those tax cuts on hold. Not the HST, but the income tax cut on hold. Do you think that'll help?
I'm not sure what's going to help right now as long as Premier Campbell is in the chair. The anger of the public, the distaste for politics and in particular for our party, but for politics generally in the province is focused on him. Is it fair? No, not really. It's not fair.
You've been in office for 10 years. You wear everything. All the baggage is yours.
So the simple solution, you can fire as many cabinet ministers as you want. You can end up sitting around the table on your own if that's what you really want to do. But the simple solution is for him to get out of the way.
And on that note, we will take a brief break on Voice of BC. The image of Gordon Campbell sitting by himself at the cabinet table. We'll be back with Bill Bennett. Stay with us.
His downfall, and this creeped in late, was arrogance. And this is the comment that's made about him over and over again. This last election, gas prices were relatively low, and the whole carbon tax got shuffled under the rug, and that emboldened him. So, he felt he didn't need to consult on the HST, but there was a cumulative effect of this kind of doing things the way he often did things, and people began to push back, and that was ultimately the end for him.
Your source for in-depth local political coverage. This is Shaw TV, your local voice.
This is Caitlin. She's waiting for a friend. It turns out who Caitlin met wasn't a friend at all. Teach your kids to become web aware. The Media Awareness Network can help. Visit bewebaware.ca.
If you would like to contact us at Voice of BC, write to us. Our mailing address is 111 1925 Blanchard Street, Victoria, BC, V8T 4J2, or send us an email to vobc@shaw.ca.
There's a million reasons to support the Land Conservancy. What's yours? Protect the places you love most and become a member of the Land Conservancy and help support our vital work.
When you choose foods with the Heart and Stroke Foundation's Health Check symbol, it's like shopping with their dietitians, who evaluate every participating product.
Bill, this is a question for you. You've never been someone who's afraid of speaking your mind about the issues of the day. So from that perspective, I'm wondering whether you think the limits of public speech imposed by the party system, imposed by the caucus system, are impacting public confidence in our political leaders, because it sure seems sometimes that way to me.
Well, here we are back with Bill Bennett, and I would have to say that on Wednesday of this week, he demonstrated that there weren't too many constraints on what he was prepared to say. And if you want to go on to Mr. Holman's website, Public Eye Online, I think you can see the full 36-minute in all its glory scrum of Mr. Bennett in action. I think it's on the Vancouver Sun website too. But what's your answer? Does the party system undermine public confidence in politicians?
That is a great question, and the answer is yes, without any doubt in my mind. After 10 years, 3 elections, sitting in caucus, I've done something that a lot of my cabinet colleagues haven't done. I've sat as a so-called backbencher. That's a lousy term, frankly, but that's the term that gets used. 5.5 years. So I was in cabinet for 5 years. I was a backbencher for 5 years. Many cabinet ministers just, come out of the private sector. They're physicians or whatever, and they come in and they get put into cabinet. They don't sit in caucus. I've done that. I've watched the frustration on the faces of my colleagues, and I've always had a roommate, and so we talk, and of course, but politicians are like anybody else in any other line of work. You go and you have a beer after work, and people express this frustration that they wish that they had more impact, or at least they wish they were respected, and that is the bottom line, that their point of view would be respected. If you come from Cranbrook, the point of view of your constituents is going to be different on many issues than if you come from downtown Vancouver. And my colleague Blair Leckstrom and I, over the years, have fought many battles inside our caucus. We won a few. We lost lots of them. But the question is, does it affect the confidence that the public has? Absolutely does, because the party system basically forces you to keep your mouth shut when maybe you ought not to be keeping your mouth shut. Maybe you ought to be saying, wait a minute, this is the wrong thing to do. You do that, you're kicked out of caucus, you're kicked out of cabinet. There must be a better way to
You told a
practice
story today
politics.
about the outdoor caucus. So you try to form a group of members who would all have an interest in outdoor issues like recreation, things like that.
Yeah, there's an outdoor caucus in the federal parliament. It's organized by Gary Breitkreitz, who's a federal Conservative MP, and he has NDP members in his caucus, Liberal members, Conservative members, and he even has some Bloc members, because the thing that holds them all together
Well,
is
there's an outdoors in Quebec.
Exactly, and just because you think you should be separate from from Canada doesn't mean that you don't like to hunt and fish and snowmobile and that sort of thing. So he's got this outdoor caucus, and I was on his mailing list for many years, and I really liked what he was doing, and so when I was a private member between cabinet assignments, I thought, well, what a good idea. Here in BC, let's try it. Let's try and do something that's nonpartisan. And so I had approached caucus and Premier about the idea and was explaining, how it works in Ottawa and what I had in mind, and I was actually very excited about it.
And you were going to have New Democrats?
Absolutely. I was going to have. Yeah, I know.
Unprecedented.
Unprecedented.
Yeah.
It's a shame. There are many good people
Premier
on that
didn't
side
like
of
the
the
idea.
house. Didn't like the idea. Got very, very hostile with me, and basically shot the idea down in front of all my colleagues in way that typical, unnecessarily belligerent, unnecessarily hostile, unnecessarily rude. And I'm a very independent guy.
I'm going to stop you there.
All right.
Call out your management techniques. You talk to anybody who trains managers. You ask them if it's a good idea for a boss to shoot people down in front of their fellow employees and humiliate them in front of their colleagues. You won't find that in the management technique of any manager in the world. Okay?
Well, I suppose it depends on the job market at the time, but when you win in politics, you can get away with a lot. And we won 3 elections,
Okay.
and Gordon Campbell is largely responsible for that.
So you mentioned Blair Leckstrom, who is now sitting as an independent Liberal, and as of Wednesday, you're still sitting as a Liberal, although the caucus may have something to say about that. Vicky Huntington sits as an independent for Delta South, and Bob Simpson is kind of on notice from Caribou North as a sort of independent New Democrat, and that's 4 members, which is an interesting number, because the way the rules are written for the BC legislature, if any 4 members band together as a political party, they get the full research budget of a third party, they get a leader's salary, a caucus chair's salary, a whip's salary, and they're an official political party in British Columbia. Is that a possibility?
It's a possibility. I think, I'm sure that the other 3 would agree with me that we don't want to do just more mischief. I mean, this is not what BC needs right now, is more political mischief. We need people to be constructive. I'm hoping, and I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm hoping the BC Liberal Party can continue to embrace people like myself. And I'd like to stay as a member, and I prefer to stay as a member of caucus if they'll have me. I'm not sure they will now, but that would be my preference, because it is this coalition, and I know what'll happen if the coalition breaks down. There will be a period of time in the province where you'll have an NDP government, and there'll be the usual kind of cleansing that takes place, and maybe the BC Liberal Party will survive, and maybe it won't.
And some people out there would probably be pretty happy with that development.
Indeed.
Think we need change in British Columbia once in a while. We've got a few questions for Bill Bennett on tape, and it won't surprise you folks if you're watching at home that we dropped a lot of what we were going to talk about on the mines and energy portfolios tonight. We were going to have Mines Minister Randy Hawes on the show, actually. But we've got a few questions for Bill Bennett, and this one is from the New Democrats, from his, I guess, former critic now, since he's not the energy minister anymore, but John Horgan is still the energy critic, and here's John. John.
The creation of the Ministry of Natural Resource Operations was done by the Premier with virtually no consultation with his ministers or with stakeholders on the ground. Couple that with a 27% reduction in line ministry staff working the ground for energy, for oil and gas, for mining. Are those the reasons that you decided you'd had enough?
Good old John, he only knows that because I said so publicly on the front page of the Vancouver Sun. However, that certainly started me, talking publicly about my sense of the party and where we were going, and the need for Premier Campbell to step aside. It was a last straw for me.
This reorganization has not received as much attention as obviously some of the other things, and partly because it's a massive reorganization affecting a lot of public servants. And my sense from the stuff I've seen from the public servants is they're having an awful lot of meetings to try to sort things out, but they don't know what it all means yet.
No, it truly is a mess. The objective, the one process, one project that Premier Campbell talks about is a good objective. The objective is to try and integrate decision-making across government, particularly as it relates to land-based decisions, mining, forestry, oil and gas, agriculture, etc. It's a noble goal. It's something that we've talked about over the years, often. And there are things that we have done to try to integrate that decision-making. You end up with silos when you have ministries, and you end up with a proponent having to deal with a whole bunch of different silos. So the goal is noble, but I can't imagine how you could justify approaching the solution to this problem by doing something in isolation with a couple of deputy ministers and nobody else. It just, again, just makes no sense to me that that's the way you would approach the problem. There are a lot of really bright people within